The desert sun scorched the horizon, painting jagged cliffs in molten gold as a lone rider kicked up a ribbon of dust across the barren trail. A sudden cry split the still air, raw and desperate, carried from a narrow canyon below. Instinct pulled him toward the sound. Boots tight against leather, fingers brushing the grip of a worn revolver. Around the bend, a ragged band of outlaws swarmed a lone figure, shadows of menace against the burning rock. Without hesitation, the rider drew his weapon, spurring the stallion forward, and the echo of gunfire tore through the canyon. Dust hung thick and choking, cries of pain and anger mingling with the roar of hooves, until silence settled, heavy and uneasy. When the dust finally cleared, the figure stood, trembling but alive, a stranger whose eyes burned with a fierce intelligence and a presence that hinted at power beyond the gun-scarred land. The stranger's eyes met his, wide but defiant, scanning the horizon with an intensity that spoke of countless battles fought in secret. Cole felt the weight of unspoken histories pressing between them. The silence thick and loaded with questions neither dared voice. Around them, the canyon whispered with the fading echoes of gunfire, rocks warmed by the sun, and a breeze carrying the faint scent of sage and smoke. Though the stranger did not speak, there was an unmistakable command in her posture, a presence that demanded respect. Cole offered a nod, silent acknowledgement of the fight they had shared, the moment of connection unbroken even as their paths remained uncertain. He watched her move with quiet precision, each step measured, alert to unseen dangers. Her hands hovered near hidden weapons, a subtle challenge in every glance. The canyon's silence pressed against them, a fragile barrier before the world intruded again with its violence. Cole adjusted his hat, feeling the grit of dust against his skin, and realized this was no ordinary stranger. Something ancient and formidable lingered in her presence, a power earned from survival and command, a force that could not be ignored. For a fleeting moment, the desert seemed to pause, waiting for the next decision, the next move in a game neither fully understood. A distant rumble shifted the stillness, the faint sound of hooves carrying across the canyon floor. Cole stiffened, instincts honed by years in lawless lands screaming alert. The stranger's eyes followed the sound, unflinching, recognizing danger he could not yet see. Dust swirled in the wind, carrying the acrid scent of smoke and distant gunpowder. Cole's hand hovered over his revolver once more, the canyon alive with tension, the fragile calm threatening to shatter with the approach of new threats. The desert, eternal and indifferent, bore witness to the meeting of two forces drawn together by fate and peril alike. The sun dipped behind jagged cliffs, casting elongated shadows that swallowed the canyon floor. The stranger finally spoke, her voice low but commanding, carrying the weight of authority and danger. Cole listened, realizing the words were a bridge to trust yet fully unspoken, a promise and a warning entwined. In that fleeting twilight, he understood that their encounter was no accident, that the threads of fate had pulled them together in this moment of violence and survival. As darkness approached, the desert seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the dawn of a story neither would forget, a tale born in dust, gunfire, and the unyielding spirit of those who dared to stand. By the time the stars pricked the velvet sky, Cole had guided the stranger to a hidden alcove carved into the canyon walls, a natural refuge from prying eyes. Shadows clung to the jagged rocks like whispered secrets, and the firelight they built flickered across faces worn by dust and grit. The stranger finally spoke, her voice firm yet careful, revealing fragments of a life shrouded in mystery. Cole listened, piecing together the subtle hints of command, the disciplined movements, and the careful avoidance of revealing her full story. As she spoke of her people in guarded tones, he sensed a legend in the making, a power beyond any ordinary survival. Something about her demanded respect, not fear, and Cole realized the world he thought he understood was far larger and far more dangerous than the desert trails he'd wandered for years. Cole's mind raced as fragments of her words settled, weaving a picture of leadership and responsibility far beyond the frontier towns he knew. She spoke of her people, their lands, and the constant threat of encroachment and violence. Every gesture and careful pause hinted at authority, strategy, and the weight of decisions that determined the survival of hundreds. For the first time in years, Cole felt the stirrings of awe tempered by unease. He was a man accustomed to lawless skirmishes, not the delicate balance of power and diplomacy required to lead a tribe against both settlers and ruthless opportunists. The desert night pressed close, and he knew that helping her was no longer a simple act of mercy. It was an entry into a world he could barely imagine, one that would test every skill he possessed. The distant howl of coyotes echoed across the canyon as Cole finally asked the question burning in his mind, the one that hovered between curiosity and caution. The stranger's gaze hardened, a flicker of both warning and revelation passing through her amber eyes. Slowly, she revealed her identity, her voice steady as she spoke the title that carried both respect and fear across the land: the Apache Queen. Cole's pulse quickened, the weight of her name settling over him like a storm cloud. He had saved more than a lone traveler. He had intervened in the life of a leader whose every action could ignite war or peace. The realization rippled through him, blending awe, fear, and the stark clarity that nothing in the desert, or beyond, would ever feel ordinary again. Cole sat back against the rock wall, letting the revelation settle, eyes tracing the contours of her determined face. The desert night seemed to deepen around them, shadows merging with the firelight. Every instinct warned him that the world beyond this canyon would not forgive mistakes made when dealing with those who commanded armies and loyalty in equal measure. Yet, there was something in Aita's quiet intensity that inspired trust, a spark that suggested that together they could navigate the treacherous frontier, facing bandits, lawmen, and settlers alike. The night carried a silence thick with anticipation, the sense that the first move had been made and the game had just begun. Dawn crept over the horizon, streaking the canyon with blood-orange light that seemed to set the rocks ablaze. Cole stood dusting off and extended a hand toward the Apache Queen, a silent gesture of alliance. She regarded him with a measured glance, weighing the strength, honor, and reliability of a man who had chosen to fight when it would have been easier to ride past. The moment hung suspended, fragile yet electric, a bridge between two worlds: the lawless, sun-scorched trails of the frontier, and the disciplined, commanding world of a tribe under threat. As they moved together toward the canyon's edge, the desert stretched before them, vast and unforgiving, promising danger, challenge, and the forging of a partnership that neither could have anticipated. The morning sun burned over the canyon, casting sharp shadows that mirrored the tension between them. Cole rode silently, eyes scanning every ridge and crevice, while Aita rode beside him, her posture taut, senses attuned to every rustle of brush or distant echo. Garrick's gang had survived the ambush, and the knowledge that ruthless men were tracking them sent a chill even across the sun-baked desert. Each turn of the trail seemed like a trap, each rise of the mesa a potential lookout for hostile eyes. The wind carried the acrid scent of smoke from a distant campfire, a subtle warning that the hunters had begun their deadly game. Cole gritted his teeth, gripping the reins, and knew there was no room for hesitation. Survival demanded strategy, speed, and an unspoken trust in the woman beside him, the Apache Queen, who had proven herself unstoppable in battle. By midday, the trail narrowed into a jagged canyon pass. Every rock, every shadow seemed to conceal an ambush. Cole slowed his horse, crouching low in the saddle, eyes sweeping. Aita mirrored his movements, one hand hovering near a hidden dagger, the other gently steadying her bow. Ahead, A crude signal fire curled black smoke against the cliffs. A warning or a trap, he couldn't tell. The desert held its breath as they pressed forward, knowing that Garrick's gang was clever, cruel, and desperate. Each step, each heartbeat carried the weight of life and death. One miscalculation could leave them broken, scattered among the rocks, their story ending before it truly began. Suddenly, a flurry of gunfire erupted from above, echoing like rolling thunder. Cole dropped low, urging his horse behind a jagged boulder, while Aida rolled to the side, barely avoiding the spray of bullets. The bandits had taken the high ground, rifles aimed with deadly intent. Dust and rock shards filled the air, and the sharp smell of gunpowder stung lungs and eyes. Cole fired back, controlled and precise, every shot measured, while Aida released arrows with uncanny accuracy, the tips slicing the air to find their marks. The canyon became a battlefield of shadow and motion, dust and firelight interweaving as predator and prey collided in a deadly dance, where only wit, skill, and courage could ensure survival. When the echo of gunfire faded, Cole and Aida regrouped behind a rocky ledge, hearts pounding, muscles tense. Both were marked by dust and sweat, faces streaked with grit and determination. Cole's eyes met Aida's, and in that brief exchange, the unspoken agreement solidified. Trust each other or die. There was no room for hesitation, no chance for error. They moved as one, silent shadows among jagged cliffs, slipping through crevices, using the terrain as both shield and weapon. Every motion was calculated, every glance a silent strategy. The desert, indifferent and vast, bore witness to the pursuit, and yet in this crucible, Cole began to understand the fierce genius of the woman beside him. The Apache Queen, whose skill and courage were as lethal as they were inspiring. By twilight, the pursuit had pushed them to the edge of a high mesa overlooking a river canyon below. Garrick's gang was closing in, their figures tiny but unmistakable against the fading light. Cole and Aida paused, surveying the landscape, calculating the next move. In the quiet between storms, a subtle shift occurred. A moment of shared understanding that this was more than survival. It was preparation for the battles yet to come. They would need every skill, every ounce of courage to outwit men who would not hesitate to kill. And though the desert stretched endlessly around them, Cole felt a surge of determination. No matter the danger, he would stand beside the Apache Queen, facing the pursuit, the violence, and the unforgiving West together. Night had fallen like a velvet cloak over the desert, stars flickering faintly above the jagged mesas. Cole and Aida crouched in a hidden ravine, their breaths misting in the cool air. The pursuit had driven them here, but it was also the first moment they could speak freely, without the immediate threat of bullets or arrows. Aida laid out her vision, her people's need for safety, the strategic advantage of controlling the river crossing, and the inevitability of facing Garrick's gang in full force. Cole listened, weighing every word, every pause, realizing that helping her was no longer a matter of choice. It was a responsibility born of honor and necessity. In that quiet, illuminated by flickering firelight and the soft glow of stars, a partnership was forged, equal parts respect, strategy, and unspoken trust. The next morning they moved with purpose, scouting the terrain from a high vantage point. Cole pointed out potential ambush spots, hidden gullies, and narrow passes that could serve as traps or defensive strongholds. Aida considered each suggestion, nodding subtly, integrating his knowledge of the frontier with her intimate understanding of the land. Together, they plotted a plan that combined tribal strategy with frontier cunning, traps, diversions, and calculated risks designed to outwit their relentless pursuers. With every marker on the dusty map and every gesture across the landscape, the alliance deepened. The mutual understanding between warrior and drifter growing stronger with each passing moment. By midday, the first test of their alliance arrived. Garrick's scouts had caught wind of their position, and the distant crack of rifles reminded them that danger never slept. Cole and Aida moved swiftly, executing diversions and creating false trails that led the bandits into ambushes they had carefully prepared. Dust and smoke billowed in the sun-bleached canyon, arrows and bullets tracing invisible lines through the haze. Their coordination was seamless, Cole drawing fire while Aida struck from hidden vantage points, each anticipating the other's movements with uncanny precision. In the chaos, trust became instinct, and instinct became survival. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the two paused at the edge of a small plateau overlooking Garrick's encampment. The desert stretched in endless golden ochre, but danger lurked in every shadow. Cole's hand rested lightly on Aida's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of their partnership and shared purpose. Plans had been set, contingencies drawn, and the first moves made to protect her people and confront the bandits. There was a quiet intensity between them, a shared understanding that survival would demand courage, sacrifice, and unwavering focus. In the fading light, the alliance felt unbreakable, a merging of skill, honor, and determination against an unrelenting foe. Night fell again, bringing with it an uneasy silence. Around a small fire, Cole and Aida shared words in hushed tones, planning the coming confrontation with Garrick and his gang. There was a subtle bond forming, born from shared danger, mutual respect, and the recognition of each other's strength. The desert, indifferent and vast, seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if even the stones and wind understood that this alliance was no mere truce. It was the beginning of a force capable of reshaping the outcome of the battle to come. May. She, in the stillness, with firelight reflecting in her amber eyes, Cole realized that he had found not only a partner in survival, but a comrade whose courage and intellect could match his own, and perhaps even guide him into the heart of legend. The desert sun rose blood-red, casting long shadows across the jagged mesa. Cole and Aida moved cautiously toward a narrow pass, unaware that a familiar figure lurked ahead. Deputy Samuel Harlan, once a friend and ally, now betrayer. His eyes gleamed with calculation, and the glint of a hidden rifle betrayed intentions he had long harbored. Before Cole could react, a sudden shot rang out, echoing through the canyon, striking Aida's shoulder. She staggered but remained poised, amber eyes blazing with controlled fury. Cole's heart clenched. The betrayal cut deeper than any bullet. The desert around them seemed suddenly smaller, a crucible in which trust and loyalty were tested to the breaking point. Survival demanded quick thinking, and Cole knew he must act alone to protect the woman who had become more than just an ally. Cole dove behind a boulder, revolver spitting fire, eyes scanning for any opening. Aida fell into cover nearby, assessing her injury with silent determination. The betrayal forced them into a deadly game of cat and mouse within the canyon's maze. Every echo of footfall, every glint of sunlight on metal, could signal an ambush. Cole's mind raced, calculating angles, cover, and timing. Even as anger burned, survival instincts dominated. He had been betrayed, but he would not fail the Apache Queen. The desert had sharpened his senses over years of wandering its unforgiving trails. Now, every second counted, and one wrong move would spell disaster. By dusk, Cole realized Aida had been captured. Garrick's men, emboldened by Harlan's betrayal, dragged her toward their camp, ropes binding her wrists, her regal composure intact despite pain. Cole's chest tightened with fury and resolve. The betrayal had turned a fight for survival into a desperate rescue. The desert winds whipped around him, carrying the distant shouts of the bandits. The smell of dust and gunpowder thick in the air. Cole's plan formed rapidly. He would strike with precision, relying on terrain, cunning, and the element of surprise. There was no choice but to save her before nightfall, before Garrick could leverage her capture to annihilate her people. The first night of pursuit became a shadowed battlefield. Cole moved silently across the canyon ridges, scouting the enemy encampment from above. Flames from bandit fires cast long shadows across rough terrain, revealing guards and crude barricades. Every step demanded calculation. One misstep could mean discovery, death, or Aida's life lost. The betrayal of Harlan lingered in his mind, stinging as deeply as the desert wind stung his face. Yet in this crucible of strategy and danger, Cole felt clarity. He would not let treachery define the outcome. With careful precision, he prepared to descend into the camp, a storm of revenge, skill, and determination poised to strike. As night deepened, Cole made his move. Using shadows and jagged rocks for cover, he slipped into the heart of the camp, silent and lethal. The desert held its breath, each step echoing like a promise of vengeance. He struck with precision, disarming guards, freeing Aida, and moving with a synchronization born of trust and desperation. She recovered her bow instantly, eyes blazing amber as they fought side by side against Garrick's men. The desert night became a symphony of chaos, dust, firelight, and determination. The betrayal that had threatened to undo them now forging a bond stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, stronger than the desert itself. The canyon was alive with the crimson glow of sunset, jagged cliffs reflecting firelight as Cole and Aida approached Garrick's heavily fortified camp. The air was thick with dust, gunpowder, and the tension of inevitability. Every movement counted, every glance signaled strategy. Cole signaled to Aida, and she nodded, eyes burning amber with determination. There was no turning back. The desert around them seemed to contract, focusing all energy, all purpose, toward the confrontation that would decide the fates of bandits, settlers, and the Apache people alike. With silent resolve, they advanced, every step a calculated risk, every heartbeat echoing the unspoken promise of victory or death. The first shots rang out like thunder as Cole fired from the rocks, the revolver spitting smoke and lead with precision. Aida loosed arrows from a hidden ledge, each one finding its mark with deadly accuracy. Garrick's men scrambled, shouting, their coordination crumbling under the calculated assault. Dust swirled, flames leapt from overturned fires, and the canyon became a maelstrom of chaos. Cole and Aida moved in perfect tandem, instinct and trust guiding them through the deadly landscape. Their combined skill, a storm no ordinary bandit could withstand. Every swing of rope, every draw of arrow, every crack of a gunshot shifted the tide in their favor. Garrick himself emerged from the smoke, red hair catching the dying light, eyes blazing with fury and desperation. Cole met him in the canyon's narrow pass, revolver raised, stance unflinching. Aida circled to higher ground, bow ready, commanding the terrain with authority. Words were unnecessary. The air vibrated with raw challenge and lethal intent. The duel was brutal and precise, bullets, dust, and echoes bouncing between rock walls. Every strike, every dodge, every calculated move was a test of skill and will. The desert held its breath as the two forces collided, each combatant aware that only one could walk away. The battle reached a crescendo as Cole and Aida combined their strengths, exploiting every weakness in Garrick's position. Bandits fell in waves, the chaos around them echoing with shouts, gunfire, and the crack of arrows. Cole's revolver was precise, every shot calculated. Aida moved with lethal grace, commanding fear and respect. Garrick's fury turned to panic as his men fell one by one, the desert canyon itself seeming to conspire against him. In a final, desperate move, Cole and Garrick faced each other, the outcome poised on a knife edge, while Aida's commanding presence from above ensured there was no escape, no last-minute advantage for the defeated. As twilight bled into night, Garrick lay defeated, his gang scattered or captured. Cole stood revolver lowered but eyes vigilant, While Aida descended from the ledge, amber eyes softened, but still commanding. The desert, now silent, except for the whisper of wind across jagged rocks, bore witness to their triumph. Cole and Aida exchanged a look, unspoken acknowledgement of courage, skill, and trust that had carried them through the storm. The battle was won, but the world beyond the canyon remained as unforgiving as ever. For now, however, the Apache Queen's people were safe, and a lone cowboy had proven that honor, instinct, and bravery could tip the scales against even the most ruthless of foes. The first light of dawn stretched across the canyon, spilling gold and amber across rocks, still scorched from battle. Cole stood beside Aida, surveying the aftermath. Bandits either captured, fleeing, or lying motionless on the desert floor. The silence of the desert was profound, broken only by the whispering wind through jagged cliffs. Cole's gray eyes traced the paths they had fought, the trails of dust and blood, and he realized the enormity of what had transpired. They had survived impossible odds, forged an alliance stronger than any he had known, and changed the course of fate for the Apache people. The desert, indifferent yet witnessing, seemed to nod in quiet acknowledgement of courage and honor. Aida's people emerged from hidden valleys and cliffside encampments, cautious but eyes wide with relief and awe. Cole watched as they tended the wounded, gathered the scattered supplies, and honored their leader's courage. For the first time, he felt the weight of his own actions in shaping a legacy beyond personal survival. He had entered the canyon as a lone drifter. He would leave as someone who had helped protect a people, whose name might one day be spoken with respect alongside the Apache Queen. The bond forged in battle had transcended mere alliance. It had become a story whispered in the wind, a testament to courage and trust in the unforgiving West. Cole and Aida rode together along the canyon rim, the wind carrying the scent of sage and distant pine. Words were few, but every glance, every subtle movement conveyed understanding and respect. The Apache Queen's strength was undeniable, yet in quiet moments like this, her humanity shone through. The weight of leadership, the burden of survival, and the unspoken gratitude toward the man who had stood beside her. Cole felt a rare sense of peace settle over him, a reminder that courage was not just measured by gunfire or battles won, but by the choices made to protect, trust, and endure. The townsfolk who had once whispered fearfully of the Apache Queen now looked on with cautious admiration. Cole's reputation as a man of skill and honor spread quietly through frontier settlements, whispered by those who had glimpsed his courage. He remained a drifter at heart, but the bond forged with Aida endured, a silent pledge that when duty called, he would stand with her again. The desert remained harsh and vast, but in its unforgiving expanse, the seeds of legend had been sown, one forged by bravery, loyalty, and the unbreakable will of a cowboy who dared to ride into the storm. As the wind swept across the mesas and canyon walls, dust rose in lazy spirals, shimmering in the early morning sun. Cole and Aida paused at the canyon's edge, eyes locked in mutual understanding. The battle was over, but the desert, eternal and indifferent, reminded them that life was a series of trials, each demanding courage and choice. They shared a nod, silent acknowledgement of what had been endured and achieved. When the dust settled, the world had changed. The Apache Queen remained sovereign, her people safe, and a lone cowboy's name etched forever into the whispered legend of the West. Together they turned and rode into the horizon, leaving behind footprints, smoke, and the quiet echo of heroism in a land that would never forget.